It is Thursday, the 21st of February, 2019, and this is the MMA Beat. Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. I am the host of this program. We appreciate you guys joining us. We are 3 deep today. To my left is Danny Segura from MMAFighting.com. He makes his triumphant return at the end of the table from CBS Sports, from where? I mean, you're in a bunch of places these days. Where are you from now, actually?
I'm cashing checks right now, you know?
You are cashing checks. It's Brian Campbell here back on the show. Now, we were supposed to be 4 deep, but Chuck Mindenhall went to the presser in Montreal to go say goodbye to Georges St-Pierre. So he was going to be here. I guess he'll be here next week. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, we'll get to your tweets and whatnot at the end of the show. Keep sending them using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. We appreciate all the submissions up to this point. So without further ado, boys and girls, let's get the show started. Now, this is a pretty big day in the sport. In my opinion, I know this is up for debate, but I believe that Georges St-Pierre is the greatest fighter of all time. And again, there's a little bit of debate around that, although I don't think, honestly, it's that close of a call, but okay. Some people are married to bad ideas. In any event, he called it quits today. He had a press conference in Montreal, Danny. We saw most of it. Some of it was in French, but we got the gist of it. There's a lot to unpack here. I guess I'll start with a general reaction. What did you make of the press conference and what he had to say?
You know, at first I was wondering if all this would be a negotiation tactic, you know, for him to get some leverage and perhaps, you know, get the fights that he wants, because we know he's still interested in fighting, you know. And, you know, with this presser just looking him up there and the way he was answering questions, he just feels at peace with this decision. And I think he said something very important. He's like, you know, I don't always know what I want, but what I do know is that I certainly don't want to stick around, you know, longer than I need to. And, you know, that's a story that we've seen, you know, all the time in MMA. So I think it's the time. I think, you know, he's achieved everything that he's been, you know, he could possibly achieve. And yeah, to me, this feels like the end. I don't feel like this is some sort of negotiation tactic from George.
Well, let's not forget, George is an incredible businessman. So everything did feel heartfelt. It felt real.
Yeah.
If George says this is the end, he doesn't want to end up being washed. He doesn't want to have somebody retire him. He wants to retire himself. Then, wow, all you can do is respect that. There's a short list of people. I don't know, Rocky Marciano, Floyd Mayweather, Lennox Lewis, who've been able to go out as champion on their own terms. I know he vacated the middleweight belt, but you get my point there. I think we just have to stop and give him a round of applause. Like, yeah. George, we are impressed by your performance. And the legacy, for me, I don't mean to skip ahead questions, but it's not even about the 9 welterweight title defenses or did he crack that top 3 or you're number 1 of the greatest of all time. I think there's a cheesy side to his legacy that we all have to respect. In this trash-talking crazy era where we're not that far removed from the just bleed infancy of the sport, here's a guy who did it his own way. And I don't mean, you know, I did it my way like Conor McGregor went out there and said, F the world. I mean, GSP did it his own way while always doing things the right way. And I think that really stands out in his commitment to his convictions, his decision-making, whether it was walking away in 2013 on top because he didn't like the drug testing culture, because the anxiety was getting too much of him for being a champion, because he got concussed against Hendricks and he knew that the physicality was amping up, to fighting for unions, to calling out the UFC for trying to make him hide that injury in 2017 when he did announce his comeback. He's always been sort of standing up and saying, this is what I want. And right now, you said there's still fights he wants? No, there's one fight that he wants, because it's the only fight. It's Khabib Nurmagomedov, the only fight that can extend his legacy even further, where there's no debate. If he wants to be the actual GOAT, he wins that fight. He's the actual GOAT, 3-time champion. It's amazing. And the fact that he's stepping aside now because there's nothing else is beautiful. But I don't think it's 100% pure. And this is not a knock at GSP.
You're answering like 10 questions I did not ask.
I'm just telling you right now that he's such a damn smart businessman.
Hold on. Stick to the topic at hand. What did you make of his retirement delivery today? The speech, the moment?
As with everything in his career, perfect.
Yeah.
Heartfelt, genuine, perfect. But because I know the savviness and the businessman nature and who he is, if he's hedging it all, good Lord, that was the perfect hedge. He wants something that they don't want to give him, so just walk away and make them come after him.
All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. I want to get to his legacy and what he meant to the sport and what we can say about his era and everything else. But let's start with why he's walking away. It's no secret that the reason why he's walking away is, as he stated, he was looking for a fight against UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. He could not get it. To this point, I asked before the show, maybe since then there's been some clarification, but I have not heard them say that it was at 155. I'm assuming that it was at 155. In all likelihood, it's at 155. People are speculating it's limits at 155?
He has said, I will cut down to 155.
I understand, but that's not what I'm asking about this. What I'm asking here is, did 165 as an option ever get raised? Because I think that changes the debate at least a little bit. Not entirely, but it does change it somewhat. In either case, it did not happen. So let's start with you, Brian. We'll work our way back to the end of this table. They couldn't make it happen because Khabib wanted it, St-Pierre wanted it. In boxing, they would have made that in that case. In all likelihood, you never know, but in all likelihood. However, the key ingredient here, looks like the UFC did not want it. Who got the call right here?
UFC got the call wrong.
Okay, tell
This
me
is
why.
an era where UFC is never afraid to sell their soul for the big fight. Never afraid to float the interim title out there. Never afraid to bring back Brock Lesnar off of a failed drug test to give him a title shot, right? It's about entertainment. It's about moving those pay-per-view numbers. What you have here in this GSP Khabib fight is a can't lose. This is a fight that I think can push 2 million pay-per-view buys and become just the second MMA fight to do that. And the potential history on board, if GSP wins, here's a guy in that greatest of all time argument to sit at the table. I think there's 6 names who sit at the table. But if we're even going to compartmentalize that even tighter, you're looking at GSP, Anderson Silva, or John Jones. Take your damn pick, whoever you think. If he becomes a 3-division champion and does it by moving down in weight late in his 30s, dare to be great style, he's the greatest of all time. He's also the only one in that 3 who doesn't have the PED cloud hanging over his head. Why would you not support that man and give him the potential to do that? The flip side is if he loses, it's the perfect rub to give Khabib Nurmagomedov, who just became a star through the whole Conor McGregor thing in terms of the mainstream. And if you have him fight and beat GSP, I mean, come on. This is an absolute no-brainer. I guess I understand why Dana wouldn't.
Okay, why didn't he do it?
2 reasons. I think first and foremost, Dana does hold grudges. And GSP has a little bit of Randy Couture in him. He does what he wants business-wise because he built up enough leverage.
Yeah, but talk about the other one. That one is
willing to stand on it. And the other one is, why are you going to sacrifice your undefeated fighter in Khabib, who may actually end up becoming one of the greatest of all time, against a guy in GSP who can win this championship and vacate it and hold it hostage like he just did to middleweight, like he kind of did to welterweight, but I disagree with that because he walked away on his own terms after
I disagree.
9 title defenses. And, okay, I can understand that, Dana, but here's the deal. It's not like Khabib is here's what I'm going to say. It's not like Khabib is a sure thing. I know that that's going to raise flags, but what I mean by a sure thing is Khabib's wild and crazy enough on his own and will stand on his own merits where if he just doesn't want to feel like fighting again for whatever reason at that moment, he may never fight again. He may fight once more and just walk away and be like, I did it. I'm undefeated. I did it. I don't think this is a guy who's going to fight another 7 to 8 times. So the idea of propping up and protecting him to not give him the GSP loss, I don't think that holds as true than if you were, let's say this was 2 years ago for Conor McGregor and you're saying, well, should we put him in a fight with GSP where he could lose? We might want to protect him.
Danny?
I think there's no clear right or wrong answer, but I do think the UFC is sort of going for the safe bet. I do think there's something to that point. GSP said it himself. At this stage in my career, I'm only here to take one fight at a time. I'm not here to stick around for 3 or 4 fights and sign something, long-term and be active. He wants no part of that. GSP versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. That's a bit of a toss-up. I don't know the way it would go. And we saw what happened at middleweight, the mess that it created. And we're still living a little bit of that mess when GSP vacated that belt.
But it's an era of mess. Not to
it is an era of mess
that Dana's caused by throwing belts out, stripping other people.
Of course.
It's already the belt.
And they're willing to do it when the money's right. But sure, there will be a huge fight between Khabib and GSP. But look, you might lose Khabib as a star because his whole thing is, he's this very interesting character, but a lot of it is that he's undefeated and nobody's been able to touch him, and he's been extremely dominant. If you put GSP in that, recipe, that might get mixed up. And then with Conor out of the picture, not out of the title picture for now, there's really no huge star. So you could potentially be losing a big star there. And then GSP, you don't know if he's going to fight again or not. I do think from GSP's perspective, he got this a little wrong because there's still a lot of moving parts in that lightweight division. We don't know how long Khabib is going to sit out. We don't know if the UFC is going to make an interim title fight. You never know if Tony Ferguson has gotten injured before. You don't know. So if I were GSP, I think the smart move would have been just to wait, not retire, just see what happens in the next few months, see how long Khabib sits out, and maybe the opportunity comes up and then he can take it.
I think secretly he's doing that, though.
Maybe.
That was sort of my
You think
point.
this is all a ruse? He'll walk back?
I think he's willing to walk away because what he only wants is the one fight that will extend his legacy. It's why he won't fight Anderson.
But you can walk
It's why he
away.
won't fight Conor.
But you can walk away. He didn't walk away. He walked away publicly.
Yes.
Like if negotiations fail, the public doesn't have to
Here's
know.
why
he told the public negotiations failed and then said, I'm done. That's totally different.
Okay, but by walking away publicly, you only do that if you are willing to stay away. And GSP is willing to stay away if you
Yes.
can't get this fight.
Yes.
But also, you're telling me GSP is not going to go back into the gym and try to figure out secretly this cut to 155 and see if he can do it? I guarantee you he will. For the same thing that Danny's saying.
I think he's already done that. I don't know that he needs to do that.
Okay, but for the same reason that Danny's saying, because this division's so deep and stacked and crazy, and who knows with Khabib, with the suspension, how much he'll fight. Somebody's eventually going to have that 155 title where it's going to make sense to have him fight GSP. And I think for at least the next 18 months, GSP is going to be ready to do that. So retiring puts the pressure back on them completely. Why did Khabib come out with that Instagram post instantly?
Puts pressure on who to do what?
On Dana to make the fight.
To make what fight?
The 155 title fight for GSP, regardless of who has
I don't think it does that at all. I think it forces him to make a title fight. I agree with that, to move things along. It doesn't force his hand in. I don't think they feel compelled. Dude, if they wanted to make this fight, to your point, they have every incentive to make it. They didn't, because here's simply a fact we have to acknowledge. Think of it like elections, right? What is a sign of a democracy? A sign of a democracy is that from you were president, we ran, I beat you, you safely hand power to me, right? That is how it is done. Safe transfer of power as a result of elections. But if you run out of town and I take control of the military and seize control, you get to some bad territory. It is terrible for a division, for a champ to earn a title and then just walk away from it. For a champ to just not defend it like what Conor did in not one but two weight classes. And here's the thing. Everyone's going to say, well, what about all the things UFC did? Dude, I cannot justify the UFC's behavior.
Right, so,
I cannot.
So
Hold on. I cannot justify it by looking at what they've done. There's no rhyme or reason. They change their mind all the time. But what I can say is, as a general normative claim, it's real bad for divisions when champions win titles and then walk on them. And I think they're tired of that. Dude, they've already got Dustin Poirier and a ton of lightweights super bitter at them. I had Tony Ferguson tweet me last night about this very topic. Dude, they're mad and they're sick of it. And I think a lot of people are like, can we please, finally, bring some order? In a vacuum, GSP versus Khabib, I do declare, is the most likable fight imaginable. There's like nothing wrong. It's like the purest form of awesome you could craft. Shoot it in my veins. But in the context in which we live, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it carries potentially very negative consequences.
In a perfect world it does, but this current UFC state is wild for all the reasons we just nailed.
And because it's so wild, they might have to dial that back, because look at the fighter unrest. You got people, you got Dustin Poirier, you got Ali Quinta asking for their release. And sure, that might be just, theatrics, make whatever you want. But the fact is that they're pissed off. They're mad about the situation. And, there are so many other contenders as well. So once GSP leaves that picture, which he's claiming that he's not going to stick around for long, he has no plans in doing that. Now you got 4 or 5 disgruntled, top contenders that, are going to be hard to negotiate with.
Oh, I get that.
So,
but my point on GSP putting the pressure back on them, he's not going to just break Dana's hand, right? Dana's going to be firm. And let's not forget, again, let me reiterate, GSP was union, yes, at one point. So that's not something that Dana's going to forget.
Right.
But if you're GSP, what's the best way to potentially change their hand? Get the current unbeaten champion, who's arguably the pound-for-pound king, and Khabib in your corner to want to make this fight. A guy who will stand up for his own
They don't want to be,
convictions.
you know this as well as I do. Again, the fight is amazing, but they're not going to be leveraged by 2-star fighters. They're
Okay,
just
but
not
what
going
if
to.
Khabib just does the kind of thing where he's like, all right, I'm only coming back if I get GSP? Do they just straight up strip him and say it was nice knowing you, or do they say let's talk about this?
No,
Let's
they
see
strip
what we
him.
can make?
They strip him. 100% they strip him. There's not a doubt in my mind they strip him. They don't want to get to that point. They might offer him other incentives to reconsider. Yeah. But if fighters draw a line in the sand, they just step right over the line every time. With the only guy being Conor McGregor. And I think that they also realized they got perilously close to losing control there with him, and they don't want to revisit that territory. I think they're also living in the shadow of that one they nearly had a mutiny on our hands. We don't want to get to that point again. So I also think it's a little bit of that. Now, we got to move the conversation along a little bit, because there's a lot of things to talk about when we talk about St-Pierre. Danny, let's start with you. I'm not asking for his legacy. I'm asking for this. What was his biggest contribution to the sport?
Man, that's a tough question. He contributed so much in the sense that he was in an era where, he was putting on the suit, brought professionalism, changed the views of the people that, that looked at martial arts as very violent and full of, barbaric people. And he was this guy that was very, a gentleman-like, very classy, very elegant. So I think in that era, he was very important because he brought professionalism to MMA. And that was a big contribution that he had. But I mean, you name it. He also brought contributions to technique. I mean, he was out there out wrestling guys like Josh Koscheck. he was so innovative in the things he was doing, and the proof is that, look, he beat the guys that were before him, the guys of his age, and then he was still competing and beating the guys that were of the new school, sort of. So he contributed a lot to the sport. But I would say his biggest contribution is that just his spirit of being a martial artist and kind of giving a nice look to MMA.
Yeah, in the trash talk era, he was the true spirit of Bushido and always respecting everybody, whether it be his opponents or the fans. That's why his Q rating, his beloved rating by fans, I think is almost untouchable. If I have to dig deep in the closet of GSP and be like, what did this guy do bad? Well, he took a bath in a grease fire before the BJ Penn rematch, and then he also reneged on that contract reportedly after beating Bisping to say that he would fight Whitaker afterwards. Two kind of small, minor defenses in the large picture, considering some of the athletes we're dealing with. Yep. Such a beloved man. And to your point on technique and stuff, is he the first true mixed martial artist?
I think so.
In terms of
the thing is, he had a Kyokushin background, so not really, but I know what you mean. He's pretty damn
throughout
close.
his career,
where you didn't need to grow up in one discipline.
Yeah.
Because, there's people that consider him the greatest wrestler in UFC history. So to not grow up specifically in one discipline so deep and be able to just round out his game at the point where you finally had to start doing that, when sort of the Matt Hugheses of the world were no longer going to be on top with one, and obviously he evolved as well. But you get my point on that. He brought a lot to the table. Yeah. That's why in that greatest of all time discussion, I was a little bit surprised that pretty much every big name, whether it be ex-fighter, whether it be talking head like you, whether it just be random blowhard, is saying GSP's walking away as the GOAT. It's not that I want to debate that. I'm just more of a John Jones guy myself. I know there's some problems in that debate, but the reason why so many people are saying it is because if you're going to pull hairs and compare guys that are that close, how likable is GSP? How respectful? How perfect? He executed a near perfect career to the point that even his missteps were perfectly finished when he came back. Just like Lennox Lewis, the two people he lost to, he came back and avenged those losses by knockout. Yeah. It's an incredible, it's not Floyd Mayweather, it's an incredible resume. Resume-wise, probably the GOAT. Maybe I like one or two other fighters a little bit better than him.
I would add to this a couple of things. I mean, I think what Danny highlighted was true, both the gentleman inside and out, professional inside and out. The things you're mentioning as well, all true. For me, what stands out about what he did was, you used the word I thought was correct, execute. Like, if you just think about his career, from every stage of it, there was considerable planning that went into it, strategizing about what the right call was. They stuck to a plan and they executed the vision. And in every way, whether it was this retirement event today and the circumstances under which it was going to happen, and the Whitaker thing, it's like he knew that was a thing he was going to have to deal with in the event that he beat Bisping. It was an unavoidable black eye, but he knew it was coming. I'm sure he planned for it. He anticipated it, which is why he got rid of the belt lickety split.
Right. It's not like he held on to it like, Conor McGregor. He relinquished it and was...
If no matter what kind of fighter you are, if you're in the UFC and you're looking at how to craft a career, how to ascend in a division, partly, you got to have St-Pierre genetics, and you have to have, obviously, a lot of ability and success. Okay. But if you can get those things together, for the ones we're talking about, every other stage of it, no one asked him to wear a suit and tie to press conferences. He told himself, not only do I want to stand out, but I want to represent myself in a certain kind of way, and I want to fight in a certain kind of way, and I want to have my career organized in a certain kind of way, and I want to have my brand in a certain kind of way. And here's the last thing I would say about what he contributed to the sport. It's that he contributed, which is to say, so many people, from promoters to journalists to other media members to other fighters to other whoever, managers, they just take. Everyone just takes from the game, right? Very selfishly they take. And of course, he got his fair share of money and attention and fame. But number one, he worked for it. And number two, dude, he did right by the sport. Like, he wasn't just a good representative. I think he gave back in setting examples, and he gave back by not going too long and creating sad stories and making us all look bad. Dude, he did right by us. When the cameras were on, when a microphone was in his face, and when he was out there competing, he did right by all of us. And there's a very few people who achieve at the level that he has that you can say that about. In fact, almost none of them you can say it about, but you can say it easily.
He did that while at the same time standing for certain things, right?
Yes.
Standing against drug use, standing against a myriad of fighter rights and all that kind of stuff. When he was gone during that absence. And it's crazy. We just kind of laid him out as a saint, as a good boy in this trash talking era.
Yeah, but he never had scandal. I get so many people hitting me up. Did you hear the latest Conor McGregor scandal? And I ignore it, but I'm saying you can't even invent that for St-Pierre.
And that's why, as we just completely put him up on the pedestal that, by the way, he deserves, then doesn't he deserve a chance to be the first guy to fight for a third title in as many weight classes so that he can become the GOAT?
Let's circle
Doesn't
back.
he deserve that?
Let's circle back and answer the question, which really is at the core of it, which is, what are the circumstances under which it is okay to either jump or, frankly, destroy is a strong word, but significantly impair title shot hierarchy? What are the circumstances by which that is okay? Because really, that's the question you're asking here. Saying GSP versus Habib would be a good fight, I mean, of course. I mean, it would be amazing, and it would make a lot of money. Can't argue with that even a little bit. And I'm asking, I'm not telling. Are those the reasons to do it?
I think there's a few things. As you got to look at the crop of the contenders. Are they up to par with the champion? Right. If you look at the case when Demetrius Johnson was flyweight champion, there was a lot of guys that were just thrown in there quite too soon, and they didn't have the experience just because there was no other contender. They needed a contender. Demetrius needed to defend the belt. So in that case, you can make a case for a super fight and somebody skipping the line. Okay, give more time to those guys. The lightweight division is not that situation. And then sometimes when you have got somebody like GSP that's given so much to the sport, as we said, sometimes you want to give him a big payday, right? Sometimes you want to see DC get that Brock Lesnar fight. So I think there are several components that you can add to that.
But all these justifications that we've done recently always surround star power and money.
Yeah.
John Jones coming back from, an obscene set of suspensions, but he gets a title shot right away on his comeback. Brock Lesnar coming back from a suspension, but he gets a title shot on his comeback. 46-year-old Dan Henderson, I know he gave that vicious motorcycle elbow to Hector Lombard at 199, but suddenly he's got a title shot when it didn't make sense, but it was a nice rematch we can package together and put in England. Those are all situations where you're making that because of storylines and pay-per-view buys. And in most of those situations, they're sketchy individuals, but you're like, well, it's business. Lesnar moves, he's going to do it.
Right.
We're talking about somebody who outside of Greece is not sketchy at all. He's, in fact, the role model for the sport in every category we just nailed. And I'm not even a GSP
And by the way, the
super
coach
fan
he
guy.
used for that, Phil Nurse, I don't think he uses anymore. Who did that? Keep that in mind.
And I'm not even this GSP super fan underneath the shirt who's trying to, fight for him. He's just a dude to me, but man, do I have respect for him. Doesn't he deserve this opportunity?
It's an interesting question. You have to figure it out because they've done it before. You know what I mean? Like, you can say, well, if they did it then, why can't they do it now? Yeah. I don't know what the answer to that is, other than I think it just causes problems. But you're right. They have gone down this road. Here's one thing that I think folks aren't considering. You've got this terrible logjam at 155. It's like, oh, we don't want to have a 165 division. Let me think about this. You don't want to drain the most log-jammed division. And when I say drain, I don't mean all the way out. I mean just bleed it a little bit so you can relieve some of that bottleneck pressure by putting them up 165. I'm not saying if they made a 165-pound division it would solve the problem, but it would go a long way towards relieving some of that pressure as some of that exodus took place up a division. If you've never seen it, I've done a 165-pound mock draft. Dude, the divisions look great even after you've done it. The fact that they won't even pursue this in light of this situation happening, part of your argument is he could come back at a later time. What you were bringing up is there's all these contenders there. Yeah. Well, what if we get to a situation where finally we get the title shot moving and then there isn't? Part of GSP's problem is just timing. It's just timing. Now, granted, he's not getting any younger, but if there was a different contender situation, if they bled him out to 165, this would be a much easier call.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, last question about GSP. Biggest one. You started with it, Brian, so we'll end with you on the GSP topic. His legacy. When he leaves the sport, how will he be remembered?
He'll be remembered as the greatest welterweight champion of all time. He'll be in that very, very small conversation as the greatest fighter of all time. And I think a big part of that is that longevity. 9 title defenses was great, but for when we used to heckle him at some point when he stopped being a finisher and became unanimous decision GSP, I think you got to look back and give him credit for the way he's been able to extend his career. Might go down as the smartest fighter ever. And there is a very small category of guys when you look at how they game plan, how efficient they are, how well they can preserve their bodies and not take extra damage. He was incredibly smart during that run of 5-round wins when he was just completely picking apart his opponent. Almost what Woodley's kind of doing in an underrated way right now. But I give GSP so much credit for that in his gut, in his strengths and his smarts, because he could have gone for more knockouts. He also could have taken more losses. He found a way to go into his 30s and still be very effective. And then when you sprinkle on the Bisping win, and you sprinkle on, some of the things he's done. Wow, did I just talk myself into GSP as the GOAT?
I think you did.
He's a damn great human. We gotta love that man. What else can we say about him?
Yeah, I have to agree with Brian. For sure, one of the smartest, if not the smartest fighter to have ever competed. Outside of the cage, very business savvy as well, and also like within the cage, just the way he approached every single fight, and the way even when he left after the Johnny Hendricks fight, he left at the right moment. He was sick of it. You can tell he couldn't have gotten one more fight. The comeback was the perfect timing. Everything, even this retirement, just seems to be coming at at a good timing for him as well. He's walking away on top. But I think he's the greatest. He's the greatest ever, because I was thinking about this last night. And I'm like, well, what is the greatest, right? We're talking about the most skilled, right? The most successful. What is to be great? And I think that encapsulates a lot of things. And I think GSP, if you look at it, he was great at everything. Pay-per-view sales, he was up there.
He was bad at trash talking.
Bad at trash talking, but
if you want to give him one knock, he was bad at trash talking.
he was like
at the end of the day, what's the end goal of trash talking? Numbers, storylines, hype.
Course, yeah.
He was pulling up pay-per-view numbers. He was always hovering close to 1 million. So, if he's not doing the right trash talking, but he's getting in the money, like who cares about the trash talking? Everything was just perfect. Everything he did was great. Not only he was a very successful fighter, but he was very skilled. Nowadays, like being the champ, it's one fight. To become a champ is one fight, right? I know it's going up a weight class, fighting the toughest person that's heavier than you, which is a difficult task, don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the champs, and it sounds cool, it looks nice with the 2 belts. But it is a one fight. Now, longevity-wise, like defending the belt multiple times, you get different looks every time. You're literally fighting the man of that time, back to back, and you're getting different looks, different tests. And that's how you know a fighter is great, when they can go through all kinds of looks, all kinds of tests. And GSP proved that. He fought everyone, strikers, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu guys, anybody. And then outside of the cage, he was great as well. So, in my opinion, he is the greatest of all time.
Yeah, to me, that's a pretty easy case. That's overstating it, but to me, it's a very strong case for St-Pierre as the greatest.
The only way he gets trumped is if you're leaning more on a pound-for-pound level. I'll say Jones, and there's some issues with that. But if we're taking in everything like you just kind of laid out, it probably is GSP.
Right.
And even
he's the most professional I've ever seen.
Yes, and he checks all the boxes. Like, look, being a champ definitely adds to your record. Got that check. Longevity, he's got that check.
Title defenses, most ever.
Title defenses, he's got that checked. I consider this part of that too as well. The drug testing, clean. No controversy. Check.
Do you hold it against him that he wore jorts when he ran in the cage to do that epic trash talk?
Did he really?
It was different.
Long
era.
jorts down to his ankles. Yeah.
Maybe he's an ICP fan. I don't know.
Maybe.
Here's what I would say. Yeah, to add to this very quickly, he's the best fighter I think I've ever seen. The best pro I've ever seen. And look, I don't want to. Matt Hughes has obviously had a lot of difficult issues after his train accident. But folks remember, look, he was a competitive guy back in the Miletich days. There were stories about him hazing Tim Sylvia, and I know that's in the past. I'm not holding it against him. I'm merely pointing out you don't hear any of those things about George. You never heard him about berating teammates.
Quite the opposite.
About how helpful he was and like how giving he was. It's just he did the impossible, not just in one realm, but like in all of them. And he not exactly made it look easy because you could tell it was wearing on him, but he found a way to make it happen. And so, to me, for all the reasons of what he did inside the cage, you don't even need to mention stuff outside of it. 3 generations of welterweights. His opponents rarely ever got better after they faced him. He beat a who's who, and
his origin story is about anti-bullying. It's like, what else does this guy have to do?
It's he's Captain Canada. That's really what he is. So, from all of us at MMA Fighting, it's a hell of a career, George. Hell of a career. Congratulations. With that, we move on to the middleweight division. It was announced this week. Oh, not announced. It was reported this week over at ESPN that Israel Adesanya going to be back in action against Kelvin Gastelum. That middleweight title not been defended since St-Pierre won it all the way back in 2017. Keep that in mind for just a second. But Danny, I'll go to you on this one. I love this fight. I love everything about this fight. Gastelum was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker, but he's not going to be back on time. Turns out Will Hunting knew what he was talking about. How about them apples? Remember Matt Damon saying the whole thing? Well, Good Will Hunting was a movie that came out when you were born, I think.
No, I know that movie.
Right.
VHS, back in the VHS days.
I have it on Betamax somewhere. Anyway, point being is he can't come back on time, so they're going to make this fight. I love everything about this fight. Tell me, do you share my enthusiasm for it, not merely as a fight itself, but for all the other things it potentially represents?
The only thing that kind of sucks about it is that it is for the interim title, and the interim title has gotten so many bad looks that it kind of, shines on that fight. It kind of gives it some negativity, like, oh, they're fighting for the interim title. Like, what does that even mean, right? But I think in this case, this is what interim titles are for. Robert Whittaker, is dealing with some health issues. He's not going to be able to be back in relatively soon. You got Gastelum, who just went through a training camp, and he's ready to go. You got Adesanya, who's been quite busy, but nonetheless didn't take much damage in the Anderson Silva fight. Looked good, and once they get back in it, and he was promised also a title shot after that. So you're checking all the boxes. No one's getting screwed over here. I think this fight is perfect. The only thing is that is for the interim title, and that kind of has some negativity attached to it. Because what I'd like to see, every time you put an interim title, you're basically selling us the narrative that the winner of this fight is going to fight the champion, right? And it sucks when, you're anticipating, okay, this guy's next, and that's what you're thinking in your mind. But then, you get a guy like Tony Ferguson or Colby Covington, they don't get the next shot, then what's the whole point? In this situation, we know that the UFC was willing to give Gastelum a title shot because he was supposed to headline that card. And we know they like Adesanya as well. So I think it's safe to say that the winner here will be challenged Robert Whittaker. So everything about this fight is awesome.
Everything about it except for the interim title. Interim title fights used to be number one contenders fights. There's still need and purpose for those, and we put interim titles on there to sell pay-per-views. Problem with too many interim titles, of course, is that it devalues the main title. Yeah. The problem with devaluing interim titles is when you just give them to people and then take them away unceremoniously, as we've seen happen to Tony Ferguson, Colby Covington. So you're right. It almost means nothing. And the reason why this one doesn't need an interim title, in my opinion, is because Gastelum didn't really deserve a title shot in reality, if you want to argue that. And Adesanya, after a win against Silva, in which he didn't look great, does he?
Are you high?
Does he? I love this fight. It's explosive. I want to see it. But come back at me. Come after me. I'm 40. I'm a man. I love the fight. I don't love that it's for the interim title. It's not like Robert Whittaker's dead. We will expect to see him back this calendar year.
I agree with a large portion of what you said. I like the idea that the win over Silva was for a hype thing, and he got that, and that's fine. Having one more step up, I'm cool with before a title shot. I really am. So in that sense, I agree. Gastelum, same reason. Because the Jacare win was a little dicey, and the Bisping win was great, but is that enough to merit a title shot, given everything that's happened? I'm with you.
Bisping win was like 3 hours after he lost to GSP, too.
I get it. Remember, because it was that loss to GSP, and he was like, I got to get the taste out of my mouth, and then he goes and he got, unfortunately knocked out. The argument, oh my God, the people who say Adesanya did not look good against Silva, you do not know what you are looking at if you believe that.
I didn't say
it is literally, it could not be more false.
Let me clarify then, okay?
Okay.
You don't look great, all right?
He looked phenomenal is what he looked like. Did he go?
No, he did not look phenomenal.
Oh my God.
He did not look phenomenal.
He was one of the best strikers
Dude,
at his game. He did not wrestle.
I know what Anderson brought to that fight. I was very respectful of Anderson's performance.
All right.
In round 2, which I thought Anderson deserved to have won, he backed up and I thought even hurt Adesanya. But to try to say that Adesanya impressed in that fight or because of that fight definitely deserves a title shot is a joke.
Impressed, yes. Deserves a title shot, no.
No, I think impressed. I think he could have been more impressive. Of course, knocking out Silva in the first round, for sure. You can always put a more impressive performance.
Let's be honest here.
Nonetheless.
Let's cut the PC talk. He played prevent defense in round 3.
He did not play prevent defense. His best round was round 3.
Did he go?
Silva or Adesanya?
Adesanya.
His best round was round 3.
Did he go for the win? Did he go for the finish?
Yes.
No.
Yes, he did. Yes,
I think you can make a case for that. Maybe.
And I'm not saying that
This is the struggle of my career. I laid out a 40-minute case for this. You didn't watch it, clearly.
No, obviously not.
And even if you did, you could still disagree. It's not that I'm ironclad. The level of sophistication that he showed, here is the key detail to understanding Adesanya. He does things that no one else in this, like when I say no one, I mean no one. No one else in the sport does. That, given the matchup, won't necessarily lead to a finish. But what it does is it puts distance between him and me, quite literally and metaphorically, at all times. Silva, this idea that it was competitive, Silva never had an effing shot.
Okay,
not one.
but that's a rabbit hole that doesn't necessarily support the crux of this argument, which is, does he deserve a title shot because he beat Silva that way? And the reality is, had he ran out there and destroyed Silva like a lot of us predicted, then you can justify him jumping the line.
I agree with that.
Because he didn't do that and looked somewhat human, and to some degree maybe had either compassion or fear for what Silva could have done if he did press up on the gas pedal. Because of that, now he gets to leapfrog Jacare, who just rallied to beat Weidman.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Lost to the champ Whittaker and also Kelvin Gastelum.
True, but
no. I think your point is well taken. That there's another step that those guys could take before they get a step to Whittaker.
So
I don't
it could be a very nice co-main event rather than setting up 236, which is like tomorrow, and we don't even have any fights on the card. Right now, though, the rumors are telling you it's interim title fight main event, interim title fight co-main event. May not end up that way,
right.
But what I'm saying is you don't need two. And Adesanya versus versus Gastelum as a co-main is hot fire sex enough that I don't think you have to splash a fake belt.
I agree with all of that. Yeah. So let's talk about the ending there. I think the point you made is one I would like to piggyback on. We can argue about Adesanya and Gastelum and everything. I think all of us agree certainly the winner of this would be rightfully entitled to a title shot. Okay, I had this debate with people online, and it was driving me up the wall. Shocker, that's a thing that happens in my life on a daily basis. People are like, oh, you know what? Now, okay, UFC, they've definitely misused some interim title shots, but this is the right one. And I'm trying to explain to them, no, you don't. The toothpaste is out of the tube. It is a very simple question. It has been laid bare by the actions of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. What is, and answer it, what is an interim title? And the answer is this: in terms of contractual guarantees, which is the only thing that matters in this world, it is a pay raise. That is not nothing. That is important. In terms of conferring status for number one contender, for next in line, for you're the man, for this or for that, it is nothing.
I would disagree with that.
You can't. Where in the language?
Give him the chance to. Give him the chance.
I wouldn't say it's nothing. I would say
It's a pay raise.
It's a pay raise, yes. But I'm saying as far as like status-wise, right? I wouldn't say it's nothing, but it's definitely a lot less than what it was.
Okay,
Because look,
tell me,
who did they go first? Who did they go first to fight Tyron Woodley?
Danny,
the interim champ or the
Danny,
or
it's a simple question. What does it guarantee you? Answer it. What does an interim title guarantee?
It guarantees you nothing.
No,
but,
it does guarantee you pay raise.
Okay,
it gives you a pay raise.
I know that, but we discussed that. We're talking about status, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't give you a guarantee of the next title shot, but it helps your cause. Who did they go first between
All wins
Usman?
help you. Any win helps
Any
your
win.
cause.
But for example, who did they go first between Covington and Usman? They try to get Colby to fight.
What did they do in the end? If you get a title,
from other reasons,
title,
'cause he wouldn't want to fight at the date.
If you get a title and then they decide that you're legitimate,
Who did they go first?
Jose, you're legitimate.
Who did they go first to and why?
They went to Colby. They said, "Oh, you're not ready? Well, fuck your title. We'll take that right back."
Exactly. But they went to him first because of the title.
Danny, if you go to a bank and ask for a loan and they tell you it's a guarantee of nothing, how much money do you have? You have nothing.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
It is exactly the same.
It's not.
If they can do whatever what you're talking about is historically there's been a set of practices that
I agree with you that there's no guarantees.
What you're arguing is historically there are a set of practices that they generally adhere to which I would agree. I cannot argue with that. Okay. What I'm noticing is whenever those practices get in the way of other interests, they simply take from them.
Correct.
You are pasting on top of nothing something. You are saying, well, they used to do that, so I guess they probably still will. They can do.
Not really.
Oh my God, Danny, what are the restrictions by which they can or cannot take a title? Here's the answer: whenever the fuck they want.
Yes.
That is called ownership. If I can come and go at a place and take what I want and do this and do that, I own that. Meaning you have no status at all. What is an interim title? It's a raise. It is nothing else.
It is a pay raise, and it does. I agree with you that it doesn't guarantee you a title shot for sure, because we've seen interim champions get skipped over. However, it does help your cause. Having a belt, if you know how to, promote yourself right, if if you're ready, you will get picked over whoever the next challenger is.
It can help your cause. It didn't help Tony Ferguson. I mean, it can help your cause.
It can help your cause.
All it really does is justify a pay-per-view.
Look, if you tell me, if I'm a number one
it's a marketing ploy for pay-per-view buys. It's a company marketing ploy. That's all it is.
Look, if I'm a number one contender in a division, would I rather have an interim title than not? What would you rather?
I don't think it matters.
I think it does.
Well, for the money it would matter, yeah.
As status for next in line, you wouldn't think that helps even a little bit? At least you get fan support behind you, because everybody we saw on the Colby situation.
It's good for photos.
People were rallying behind him.
It's good for photos, but when the rubber meets the road, it does nothing for you.
It doesn't guarantee. I agree with you on that. But to say that it doesn't help the cost to get a title shot is wrong.
Okay. So
I'll just put it to you this way: you're number one contender in the lightweight division, or in any division.
So
would you rather have
who am I? Am I Tony Ferguson?
No, anybody in the lightweight division, or anybody in any division.
Right.
If you're a number one contender, would you rather have an interim title or not?
If I'm already the champion?
No. The champion's there.
And I'm number one contender. Would I rather have it for money?
Yeah, of course. But you wouldn't think it helps your cause to get the next title shot?
Only in as much as the UFC agrees that it does. If once the UFC agrees that this situation no longer helps them, they take it right from you. It is whatever UFC wants it to be. Your argument is, if the UFC wants that interim title to mean something, maybe then it can. But the instant they change their mind, it is a trophy and a trinket at a press conference.
I agree with you. Nonetheless, they still went to, Colby first. Why? Because he was the interim champ. So it does.
But what good you get? Okay,
Love the intensity. This is looking a lot though.
look,
like
it's a
MVP
helpful
daily
debate.
record.
No, it's a good debate to have.
The reason why he didn't get the shot is because they didn't want to. I don't know all the details because that's obviously unknown. But one of them that's been around that is well aware of is that he wasn't ready for that timeline, right? And he wanted a different timeline, and then they skipped him over there
Here's
until
the deal.
in there.
So your argument is
They would have picked Colby over there until.
right. So
if
they
Colby
did.
would've been
So let
ready.
me ask you this: he's champ. You're number one contender. I'm number two. Right? Champ, interim champ, number one contender. All right. What prevents the UFC from skipping you and going to me for a title shot, even if you're healthy?
Their interest.
Nothing. Nothing stops them. So what is that? It is.
I
It
agree.
is
It's
whatever they
Marketing
want it
ploy
to
on
be.
a pay-per-view poster.
It's not a guarantee. I agree.
We can roll on here. I'd love the pass. My boy is all grown up. He was borderline like, do you like apples? We were getting close on the good.
Hey,
one,
so this is what the show's about.
Luke was like, first of all, don't do that. It was great. It was like that.
Well, I had the Will Hunting thing. He was following it up. It was good. In any event, the interim title or not, it's going to look good on posters. We all agree that that person there deserves the number one contender shot. I don't even know who else it would be at this point if it's not that guy, right?
It has to be.
Right? It's not Romero. It's Rockhold's on his way up. Jacare's the only one still floating out there.
Yeah, but he's had recent losses,
But he just knocked out Weidman.
I know.
Can we do a Romero-Jacare rematch? Because that fight blew the first time and just kind
It
of...
was good at the end, sort of. All right, let's move on very, very quickly. We spent a lot of time having this. We could do it forever. So let's do this. How about UFC on ESPN 1?
Yes.
What?
Sorry, I thought you were going to say Prague. I was going to say we could do that really quick.
No, we'll skip that one because we're just running out of time. Usually we like to look forward in the show, but unfortunately that's it. What does the UFC do with Cain, Brian? What did they do with Cain?
It's a really tough spot. I don't think it was one that we thought we were going to be in.
Yeah, I could have imagined him losing, just not like this, and then getting injured.
Do we have to? Can we go through there's a hipster Twitter debate back and forth. I mean, there are sides. You either believe
Yes.
that the knee broke or the knee snapped because of the punches, although there's a minority of people that believe that the punches caused the knee and that the knee's actually not that injured. It's just the punches caused the leg to go numb, and that's why the knee.
Forget that, though. What do they do now?
Yeah, that's a great question. You got to run him back soon. As long as that leg is okay, you have to put this out of your memory, and we'll look back as one blip on the radar from when he came back from injury. You got to put him right back in there with a big name. There are no soft comebacks. We've seen that. He got Francis Ngannou. That's not a soft comeback after this far away. You got to come right back with a guy right below that. I'm talking even like a Derek Lewis. You got to come right back with a name. And then if Cain doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. But I don't think you gain much by taking the long route. He's already been out for so long. He took an extra year, let's not forget, just to make sure mentally and physically everything's right. He was a dad, had the baby, the baby born and all that, and that's great. But there's no time to waste here. He's got to come back in like July, and it's got to be in a fight that if he wins, he's back in this title picture because heavyweight has been historically barren outside of the top two guys at the time. What we have now is potential fun right now when you consider Stipe, Francis, and DC are still big. Brock might be back. Jones might move up. Even Gustafsson had whispered about maybe moving up. We got some fun to be had. Get him right back in the mix, and you can forget this moment, and you can chalk it up only to Cage Rust in the end.
I think there's enough room for a tune-up, or maybe not a tune-up, but a fight that does, elevate him a little bit, but it's still a manageable task. I mean, remember when he spin wheel kicked Travis Brown at UFC 200? That was a great moment. It definitely added a nice little highlight reel to his career. Travis Brown, a formidable, contender at the time. But, he wasn't up there in the top 5, but, probably within the top 10. I think you can do that, and there's enough room for Cain to, get some momentum back on back. The last win was a fluke. Let me get Stipe. Let me get a top dog. But I agree with you in the sense of the time's running out. There's no slow build-up now. You got to get going.
So what if the knee puts him out another year? Then what?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Then I think the argument is over that he's the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. And right now, I think he is the greatest heavyweight in the UFC history, but it's dependent upon coming back and just reminding and reestablishing
it's that next chapter he has to write.
He becomes not necessarily Grant Hill, but he becomes then a guy who did not live up to expectations, who had the potential to be everything. Because look, we can almost argue away the two defeats, right? Knee injury versus JDS. Sea level Cain in Mexico at 10,000 feet, which I'm sure he was injured at some point. I mean, he was a walking injury. That's why when he went down, look, I didn't see the punches until I watched the replay for the 79th time and saw JFK's head explode on the black and white film there. But I finally found out those punches did land. But the point was, right when that happened, you're like, oh, man, can this guy just not get a break? Can he not avoid this narrative? That's why you got to come back right away to remove this narrative. If he's out for another year, then he just becomes a celebrity, almost like GSP coming back. How can you fit the celebrity into a fun fight? And that's it.
What about Danny? Any disagreement with that?
No, I agree with Brian. I think when we talked about this on the MMA Hour, I think right now this loss wasn't career ending, but it definitely put him at a fork in the road where, if he loses another one, man, he's going to go down a path where I don't know if he's ever going to get back to the title. And then maybe, as you said, you can put him into fun fights. What if, he fought this guy every now and then. But if he wants to compete for the title, he needs to win the next fight. And he's in a weird spot right now, and who knows how long he's going to be out for the knee, but the next fight is crucial.
Look, if DC goes away, and DC's still kind of complicating this situation, we don't really know what direction he's going. Yeah. Retirement, Brock 205, we don't really know. If he goes away and Stipe gets a chance to fight and ends up winning the championship again and reestablishes his reign, you still prop Cain back up for a Stipe-Cain fight that in some ways defines who's the heavyweight champion of this era and maybe of all time. You still then can refurbish Cain and get him back into something big. There's no question about him. He's never going to fight DC, but do you know the fight that we should make spinning off of this? Is Ngannou Brock.
Cool. I thought about that one on my radio show the other day.
Because look, it sells because Brock versus anybody sells, but now you go back to that narrative that Dana spun up a year ago.
I feel like that'd be a bad fight for Brock.
Frank Ngannou is the next Mike Tyson. Remember that failed narrative because Dana crapped all over it afterwards.
Yeah, but, okay. So let's get into this one, which is the second part of this. What they do with Cain is still contingent upon what the health status is.
Yeah,
here's the health status of Francis Ngannou. Full bar, buddy. He is really feeling it. I have to say, I am unbelievably impressed by his resurgence, and I'll tell you why. You've seen it in boxing a million times. Sometimes these guys take beatings that go on too long, and in the moment, you don't know if that's that one, and then when it's over, you're like, I think that went on a little too long. They come back out for the next one, and they're just not exactly the same, and sure enough, he comes back out for Lewis, and he couldn't pull the trigger, which is like all the red flags in the world. But he recentered himself. I don't know exactly what he did, but he figured it out. He just busted down the door of Curtis Blades' situation, and then he did what we did against Cain. Now those were very, very short fights, but he was throwing, he was stuffing takedowns, he was going after, he did not look afraid, he got in there and mixed it up. Danny, are you as impressed? Is this not one of the more interesting, resurgent fighters I can think of in some time?
It got scary there because there was a lot of comments about, him not wanting to do wrestling, about what that loss did to him. He was very open about it, how he felt scared. And for a fighter to say that, it takes so much. I mean, we rarely see those comments pop up. Nobody's scared, right, in the MMA world. So it kind of looked dicey for him. And also, there were so many outside factors. Sure, the technical aspect, the mental aspect, but promotion-wise, I think he recently revealed that he hasn't talked to Dana White in over a year. Yep. Dana White has some comments. So now when you start getting, certain, tension with the promotion, you go, snap, where is he going to go? And all of a sudden, they start feeding him wrestlers. And you go, this might be the end. He might just go on a terrible losing streak here. But he beats, Curtis Blades. He beats Cain Velasquez. And this is what I'm saying. This man needs a title shot. A lot of people are saying, I kind of know how it's going to go against DC because we saw Stipe out-wrestle him. Well, did Cain out-wrestle him? No. Did Curtis Blades out-wrestle him? And that's part of it. Like the fact that he's so powerful that he can end the shot as soon as you're just trying to close the distance. Could that be DC? Who knows?
It's funny
but
that Cain,
I'm down to find out.
In media day said, the one thing I'm not going to do is go for an early shot. And then he went for an early shot and got... So look, to your point, yes, repaired himself physically, but I'm much more impressed how he repaired himself mentally from the loss to Stipe, because let's not forget, he was propped up to be the next big thing, MMA's answer to Tyson. And when you lose that invincibility, I know he had already lost in his career, but when you lose that invincibility, it's really hard to come back. But let's still keep a certain temperature here and say...
I agree.
He blew away Curtis Blades in a minute, he blew away Cain. He still has never been taken down and had the energy zapped out of him. So that's why Brock is the perfect match.
Or DC.
Because
Either guy.
Let me just support this.
Okay.
If Brock comes back right now against DC or against John Jones, however you're going to make whatever, in both cases, it's a full-on money grab. You're only trying to pull people for the curiosity of watching Brock again and bring those WWE fans.
They're not competitive.
And every person knows Brock's going to get knocked out by DC or spinning wheel kick knockout by John Jones. But Ngannou has enough of a weakness that fits Brock Lesnar's one strength really, really well. And I don't mean that strength is sticking that needle, but I mean that strength.
But here's the deal. Okay, so you're making a more competitive fight, which I 100% agree with. But to what end? Unless Brock is going to be reintroduced, the money grab is really the only rational approach.
Because if you may only get one fight out of Brock, okay? Because if he goes out and gets exposed by DC or Jones, no one's going to want to see him again on this type of level. And why would he fight on a lower level, right?
Right.
You may only get one more big fight out of Frank Ngannou as well, because if he goes in there in a title fight against DC and gets his ass dragged around for 5 rounds because he can't wrestle, we'll be back to where we were after the Stipe fight. So if you can only get 1 out of each, why not try to get 2 out of Brock, which is by giving him a big name who he might be able to beat if he can reproduce
and
that.
Then setting up a DC
and
or
then
Jones
you
fight?
set up a Brock DC fight that would not only give you your curiosity pay-per-view buys, but you would give people that will talk themselves into going, did you see how he wrestled friggin' Brock?
Danny, you like that idea?
How he wrestled Ngannou?
I mean, I feel like with Brock, you definitely you're only getting 1 more fight. Maybe 2 if lucky. And I feel like if you're in the Ngannou business, look, Ngannou might be older. He's in his 30s, right?
Early 30s, but yeah.
But for a heavyweight, he's still very young. And especially in MMA years, he hasn't taken a whole lot of damage. Only the Stipe fight was the real big one. But if you're still in the Ngannou business, you know, the next big thing, round 2, put him against Brock Lesnar. Let him get a nice win. Of course, there's a big if there. But if he gets a big win, you know that he's going to be sort of a star there, and then you can throw him in the title, and it'll be a big fight. But I disagree with you in the sense of Ngannou only having 1 fight. Let's pretend he goes fights DC, gets out wrestled for 5 rounds. He's still a guy that can knock anybody out at any given time, and that itself is worth watching. Like, you can put him up against any striker, Dos Santos, anybody, and people will watch. He'll still be a commodity, a big name that you can put in a pay-per-view card that will sort of
there's a difference between headlining a card in Prague or being a potential pay-per-view main event headliner, and if you get him exposed again, I think you lose the idea that you still have the idea that he could beat anybody on any given night, but you're going to lose the idea now that people have seen twice a guy potentially get exposed and embarrassed, then you're going to lose any kind of main event credibility there.
Still, though, to Danny's point, if you lost, it would be the champion and then the champion who did it. Like, in other words, anybody who's not a champion, your ass is on notice, right? Maybe he can't beat the champion if that's what ends up happening, but anybody else can get it. That's an interesting place to be.
But he'll end up a gatekeeper anyway once he gets a couple losses, so he'll get there anyway, so why not give him a chance to be...
Well, first of all, he may just end up beating some of these guys that we're saying he couldn't beat. Like, he could go in there and smoke Brock, and then the whole plan's up, what are you going to do?
I mean, that's why it's a win-win.
I think, what fight was it? I think Anthony Hamilton, where like they were literally showing how to do an arm triangle in the back, and he's like, oh, let me just try it, and he goes there and submits the guy.
Yeah, he's He-Man, that's why.
Yeah, he might develop, good enough takedown defense, given also his athletic ability to, stuff.
I don't know. There's a lot of he might have. All we've seen him do is come back and smoke 2 guys, and more power to him for doing that.
For sure.
But
There's a lot of questions.
There's nothing small, man.
It's been about 1:20 in ring time.
I agree with you. Both options are great, but you also got to look at DC, and he's done so much. He needs a big payday. I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to deny him that and then give it to Ngannou.
DC's at the point though where every fight's a big payday, and he's probably only gonna do 1 or 2 more, and one of them will be John Jones. So DC's fine. DC doesn't need.
I'm sure he'll be fine, but nonetheless, getting that Brock Lesnar payday is going to be nice. A guy that fought injured, defended his belt injured for the promotion, just to give them a main event
On short notice.
Yeah, a guy that, dude, he's done so much for the promotion. If anybody deserves a big money fight, be him.
There's what you need to learn, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't matter how great of a guy you are. You can be a GSP for days, but you will not get the UFC to love you unless you are a company man.
It's true to that. Before we get to Under the Radar, let's quickly do this. Bellator had a weird weekend is what I would call it, because matchmaking and card construction, it's a lot of engineering, so there are things you can criticize about it, but sometimes things just don't go your way. Neither main event on 215 or 216 really went their way.
What a collective kick to the stick, right?
Yeah, it certainly was. I just knew you were going to do that. In any event, the bigger one to me, though, was the daily MVP one, and I was thinking about this as a DAZN customer. This is why I want to call it a weird weekend. I saw folks on saying, Bellator had a bad weekend. I don't know if they had a bad weekend. I don't really believe that. But I don't know if they had a good one either. I didn't come out of there feeling great about... Here's the issue. The whole claim, and it's not just Bellator, it's Canelo Alvarez, it's anybody else there who are claiming you should come to us because we're going to get rid of pay-per-view. It's pay-per-view, pay-per-view, pay-per-view. This is what we're going to be doing. And some of that's going to be exaggerated. But you're fighting Rocky Fielding. Apparently the numbers were terrible. Now this next one against Daniel Jacobs should be significantly better. Okay, great. But here's my point about DAZN and about Bellator. It's not just about Bellator, but more about DAZN generally. You're saying you're giving me a premium product, and to a degree, you can't guarantee what's going to happen in a fight. Some fights on paper, and Daily MVP checked all the boxes on paper. They can't all be entertaining. Okay, I get it. But you're asking me to pay for this? This far in, I know it's still new, Brian. Does DAZN feel like a premium product to you right now? Because here's the thing: the next big show is not till April.
No, I mean they're not asking you a premium price though either. So
They're claiming to give me for $10 a month a premium service. It doesn't feel like a premium service, and I'm a customer. I'm paying. I have a right to say that. I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth right now.
It's not a premium service yet for boxing. It is some nights. It is pick and choose here and there. It's great to have Bellator on there, but I still have a problem with taking two cards and putting on back-to-back nights in the same city when the cards alone aren't like MVP Daily is a must-see. We have to be there. But the rest of that card, the card alone, if you had combined those two, then suddenly, and it's DAZN only, then suddenly you're going, okay, I have to see this card.
But they have to give to Paramount and they have to give to DAZN.
True, I get the business set up, but then if it's the first the big two fights on the card fail in terms of entertainment, well, hey, that's a pretty damn loaded card. We had a good night. When you're stretching that across 2 nights and the main event on 2 nights consecutive fails, then you're like, wow, I gave Bellator basically my whole weekend, and what did I get as a fan? I think that's a bigger problem than. I mean, look, do we really? What's this 2 nights back-to-back thing? Can we stop that?
Danny, what do you think? Do you feel like you're getting your money's worth so far?
Well,
and again, it's still early.
It's still early. I think it's a lot of it is a work in progress still. It's not a finished product. But nonetheless, they are offering a bunch of things, not only Bellator and boxing, but there's also other MMA promotions.
Combate.
Combate's on there. So if you're a fight fan, you are getting a nice little package there. And to Bellator's point, look, Bellator's been putting on good fights on DAZN. If they don't live up to them, Scott Coker can't go in there and fight for Daly, can't fight for MVP. Their job is to put on the fights. If they deliver or not, that's not on them. And they had a pretty solid card. If you actually look at it, the Roy Nelson Miracle was an interesting fight. It actually, when it played out, it was pretty interesting.
Valerie Loretta was a great signing.
Valerie Loretta was a great signing. She
it was
seems
good
like
TV at the very least.
Yep.
Who else fought on that card?
Right, exactly.
No, but there was another fight. Che Congo, that wasn't really a
kind of blew up in
great
the face
fight.
a little bit. But again, that's not their fault. I mean, it's
nonetheless, they got names there. They're building something. And
it's not that I'm saying Bellator's not premium.
Yeah.
It is, but for the most part. What I'm saying is the way in which it's gone so far, I don't blame that fight for being boring. What I guess I'm saying is you're asking me to pay $10 a month for just DAZN. When I turn it on, if I'm seeing 2 strikers who have to go outside of their comfort zone to the point where you wouldn't really see high-level strikers in MMA do that, they would have much better ground games. Yeah. That's, okay, it'd still be boring, but it'd be way more premium. That wasn't premium to me. Not to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But again, Bellator can only do so much, right?
I get it.
And I think for now, their job is to, put on the fights that, good fights that fans want to see. And I think for DAZN, if you compare usually for Paramount, the DAZN ones have been propped up. So, I think it's a work in progress, and let's see down the line how.
Who do you blame more for that MVP Daily, which was rightfully very heavily promoted, very excited on our side of the table?
Felt like a big fight.
I don't blame Bellator for that at all.
But you can't blame Bellator. I think it comes down to the fighters.
I blame both of them. I think neither of them. Here's the problem. Basically, they set it up where it was so much on the line for bragging rights and status that if you're going in there and you just can't lose, you can win, but if you win by the skin of your teeth, that's okay. But losing is such an awful thing. Then you're going to fight relative to that lower level. You're not going to fight in a way where you're comfortable. And the style matchups also, it turned out, didn't create for what we thought it would be. But I think it was both of those guys being like, I just can't lose to this guy. And if that's the case, you'll do just the strategic amount to thread that needle.
Bad for MVP. Whereas got the win, advances in the tournament. That's great. And this pressure isn't fair that could have been on him, but there was a certain amount of pressure on him to be potentially a homegrown Bellator face because James Gallagher just got sent to hell. Mike Kimball the night before just got knocked out. That was a young-looking guy. Aaron Pico just got knocked out again. Not that none of those people are coming back, but the idea of building a Bellator star, having somebody on DAZN that's worth $9.99 that you can't see in the UFC. Yeah. A lot of pressure on Daly against a rival who was going to be a style that seemed made to order. I know Daly didn't end up fighting in that style, but I kind of feel like there was a little bit more pressure on Daly to realize that and to be like, I can live up to the hype now. I can become a true star, crossover star, but I got to go out there and actually take chances and finish this guy. And I felt neither wanted to take chances. And I mean, DAZN and Coker can't fight for them. But
no, that's not their fault. I don't blame them for that.
What a collective. That's why I almost put more blame on MVP. Even though he fought the safer way and got the win.
Interesting.
There was a lot more at stake. And again, maybe it's unfair that some of that was on the line, but there was a lot more on the line there than just that tournament victory.
I think MVP still has a lot of room to become a major Bellator player because nonetheless, he got a win over Daly, who's fought forever, who's fought in all the organizations, who's an elite fighter. So, moving on, let's see what he does against Douglas Lima, because maybe it doesn't end up being, a wrestling match, and he can actually put on a crazy knockout. And if he does, you got a star in your hand.
Luke, was he exposed? Not just in the lack of entertainment. Was MVP exposed as a non-elite in that fight?
No. It's been pretty clear for a while that there might be a limit to his upside if somebody can present a well-rounded challenge. That was, you're asking in this fight, no. That should have been clear a long time ago. Even like the No-Sean Burrell fight, it should have been clear, and all these other ones.
Fernando
Gonzalez is like, he's an incredible striker, and he's maybe one of the best showmen I've ever seen. The mean glasses, amazing. I loved it. But it's pretty clear that some guys can train and bring that part of their game up to speed, and some guys can't. I think that's still that's lacking for him a little bit. All right, with that out of the way, quickly, it's time for Under the Radar, story that passed, got some attention, maybe not a lot, could have gotten more, kind of interesting. We'll start at that end of the table. Brian Campbell, what is Under the Radar?
Scott Coker talking about a featherweight Grand Prix, which is great. There's some fun featherweights. In
16 of them, apparently.
But 16 men? Now I've got a couple questions here. Very successful heavyweight Grand Prix. This welterweight one is fantastic. The spirit of it is they have to fight each other no matter what it ends up. Even in the old man heavyweight one, it was a fun idea of what if Chael ends up fighting Fedor? What's that going to look like? That's fun. But if we start doing it in every division, and now we're going up to 16 guys, does Bjorn Rebney start to get some checks in the mail for his original idea? I mean, we kind of crapped on that original idea and vision, and Coker came in and changed it and kind of went into Carnival Bellator mode for a while and had a lot of TV success. But, man, I feel like we're going back full on Rebney now. Is that okay? Are you cool with that?
Yeah, once a year.
I like it once a year.
I like it. I think it's a smart call.
As long as it's not the sole way of matchmaking, because that's what the Bjorn Rebney era was. But I think 60 might be too much. I think you get 8 of the best at any division once a year. I think that's perfect.
How about we just do a Bellator open weight 64-man tournament? March Madness.
If they did it, if they did it where they like March Madness, what are the 2 most exciting days of March Madness? It's the Thursday and the Friday, right? Where there's 8 million games going on at once, and you're checking your brackets. If they did a Friday Saturday where they went all the way down, so they pared down the 16 all at once to a degree, not all at once, but made some
fun. Yeah.
That would be kind of
interesting.
I
believe that Scott told Ariel on ESPN that his idea was to do all 8. So all 16 guys would fight on the same day, and then he corrected himself and said, well, wait, maybe we'll do a Friday, Saturday. So that's not bad.
That's the way to go. All right, Danny, what's under the radar?
UFC 237, Anderson Silva's returning against Jared Cannonier, a fight that I didn't see coming. I don't think anybody else did.
You don't like it? Why?
Because I think Anderson Silva is at a point right now where you can do fun fights with him. I don't, money fights, put him up against guys that, that are, I think that fight's exciting, but I don't think Jared Cannonier, sure, he beat, David Branch and looked very impressive in his last outing. Nonetheless, he's not, he doesn't carry the same star power or feel that, for example, Adesanya was carrying or some of the older guys that have been fighting for forever. So not particularly my cup of tea, but nonetheless, I think, it is in his hometown. So there's that. And, if he gets a win, it'd be maybe a nice way to retire. I don't know, but didn't really like the matchup.
No, this matchup sucks.
Yeah.
I like Jared Cannonier.
No, I like him, but this is the Derek Brunson fight all over again. It doesn't make any sense unless this is the retirement fight with the banner and the party and he's going away. Then...
I think it's just that he wanted that one more in Brazil and they did him a solid. I think that's really what it is. For me, under the radar, if you guys didn't see it, not the entirety of Mark Hunt's lawsuit against the UFC and Brock Lesnar and Dana White was dismissed, but the majority of it, all except for essentially good faith claims. All of the doping claims were thrown out, including with prejudice, which means he can't even reintroduce them at another time and under any other premise. Why was it thrown out? A lot of people were confused by this because the judge ruled that he did consent to fighting potentially a doped opponent. And folks say, how can that be, right? He didn't explicitly say, I like fighting doped opponents. I'm okay with this. It's not the argument. The argument is actually pretty simple. Think of it this way. This is what she was trying to say, the district court judge. Why is USADA here? Why are they here? They're here because the idea is that they can catch, deter, and punish potential cheaters, which means USADA is being brought in because we know, not merely in MMA, but in all sports, every single sport on earth generally has a problem with trying to limit the use and the presence of performance-enhancing drugs. In any sport you play at a professional level, you do assume some kind of risk that your competitor, someone on the team or someone against you, could potentially be using. There's no method of perfect eradication. So how great that risk is, I don't know. But there is always a risk. USADA's presence lets the fighters know they are on notice that this is a thing that could happen. So when he claimed, I had no way of knowing, it's matter-of-factly not true. He had done interviews saying, I know that this guy is juiced to the gills. it's not necessarily fair, but what the judge said was you can't claim criminal penalties based on this. The sports organization, USADA, whoever, they can do whatever they want, and if they want to sanction this, it's fine. You just can't go through the court system. And I am so glad that they did that, because we have this deranged idea in MMA that taking doping issues, which I know are controversial and complicated, and then applying law enforcement to it will go well. It is so funny to me that in MMA, and you mention any other drug, particularly marijuana, and folks will go, the war on drugs is a real failure. It's never worked. Oh, but maybe with PEDs, just this once it might actually work. Oh, really? So for all the reasons it failed before, now it'll work? It's a terrible idea. There are other remedies to fix the problem if you really believe it's that serious. Taking it to the courts and saying it's a form of assault is a deranged, psychotic idea that has real penalties.
I don't know. I watched TRT Vitor. That was assault, brother.
We've had this argument before. You want to have it one more time?
No. This guy's rolling his eyes behind his eyes. I'm telling you that. By the way, in the history of seeing somebody on a screen and going, that guy's juicing, who do you think was the most worst on that?
I've seen
was it Stallone in Rocky 3, or was it Brock at the UFC 200 Q&A when he came and took his shirt off?
No, I've seen some regional card guys where you could just tell, man. Skin looked like leather, back covered in acne. You're like, wow. One of them actually lost, though. The thing about TRT Vitor is this. It's not an argument about whether or not these things confer advantage. They clearly do. The question is how much. And because anti-doping authorities can't answer that question, I find that to be a big problem. That's a big question. It's a big claim. Some answers do. It's a separate argument. My argument about Mark Hunt, and the judge even noted this, the judge noted that you're not saying that Brock Lesnar acted in any way out of bounds of normal behavior, and you're saying your injuries are consistent with a typical MMA fight. If you're making a claim about safety, that's the issue, safety. When you had TRT Vitor go off the stuff, what happened? He got TKO'd and KO'd 5 times. Mm-hmm. You didn't reduce violence, you just shifted who took it. You cannot look at MMA today and say it is safer. There might be a change in who gets a preference, but the overall amount of violence hasn't changed at all. In fact, it might have gotten even worse.
Well, I
that's
think
the
it's
issue.
safer that TRT is not legal. That's safer.
Oh, I don't think TRT should be legal either. That's a separate issue. But my only point, and the judge was making this, is if you're making a claim about the harms caused, you need evidence, and there was none. That's why.
And by the way, RIP Henan Barrow. I don't want the Baron era to be over, but it looks like it's.
Yeah, and then that's another one too. And then, by the way, Megan Anderson got no trouble at all with the CSAC. They said the thing about cats and gun. All right, a lot of stuff. We got to do this. Time now for After the Beat, where we take your questions and your comments, your bitches, your gripes, your smart-ass remarks, and we answer them using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. Without further ado, that starts right now. All right, we're back. Luke Thomas, Danny Segura, and Brian Campbell. I felt that show was one of our better shows. I really liked the debate.
Your temperature was rising. You know, your
good.
blood pressure was up.
Everybody wants consensus. I don't want consensus. I want disagreement.
You ever been like in a subway or public area and you see two people, they may end up having a fist fight, and you're like, I'm a Samaritan, I could go the other way. Should I walk over just in case and try to break this up and risk getting hit? I was like, how quickly can I get out of
come
my
on.
chair?
I feel like you're the world star.
There was some heat over here.
It's like you're the world star type of guy. You'd be there ready with your phone.
yeah.
Everybody just wants their opinions parroted back to them, and right or wrong, I'd rather have a debate about it. Right? Agree?
Yeah, it's good to have discussions, and it's good to have different ideas. And
There you go.
All right, let's beat off. What are you guys ready?
There we go. All right, that's a weird person at the end of that table. Let's go to our first tweet, please. Okay, Danny, you first. What's the worst aspect of UFC contracts? The fact that fighters don't own their likeness, the fact that fighters can't talk about the terms of their contracts, or that the UFC can effectively can the contract whenever they want?
I think the last one, yeah. I think the fact that like you have a contract to fight someone. I think Paul Felder made a good point about this, like maybe last year when he was supposed to fight. Who was it? I forgot the exact situation, but
Who's fighting Vic? For UFC Nebraska, right?
Right, and then that fight got moved.
You know about 223 in Brooklyn?
That's the one I'm talking. Was he supposed to fight out?
No, he was fighting.
Pettis?
I think you might be right. No,
Wasn't he fighting Pettis?
Pettis.
He was supposed to fight someone.
I don't remember. It's a good
The
point.
case is the fact that like you have a contract, you signed that you're fighting so and so, and the UFC can go, well, we're taking your opponent, put him somewhere else, you're without a fight. And you have a legal document saying you're fighting this person at this date, at this venue, and yet that doesn't really mean anything. You know, it can change at any moment. And maybe you have plans of going on vacation after. Maybe that's the only time that suits you. Who knows? So I think that's a big one.
Yeah, they can use a players' union. Union, yes, here. like GSP and Bjorn once told you, right? Did I just get my credential pulled? All right, let's move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say I don't know if it's the worst part, but the likeness part is kind of crazy, if you ask me. But yeah. Here's the thing. I saw that on the Joe Rogan's Fight Companion, they were talking about what they think the Cowboy and Conor fight was signed. And I don't know what they know, but they kind of hinted that it was a done deal. And Dana was like, it's not even close to a done deal. I don't know what that means, but I have a hunch. Again, I don't know. So if they talk to Conor, great. But here's the thing. If all you did was talk to Cowboy, they can give him a bout agreement to fight Conor, and then they don't have to, based on the wording in there, they don't have to acknowledge it. They can just give a bout agreement to somebody else, a la what they did at 205 for Habib and Eddie. They can go 1,000 different. So if Cowboy's got one, hey, I hope they honor it. I'd love to see a Cowboy Conor fight, but that he has that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Next. All right, there, Mr. Campbell. What does an MMA world look like if the UFC were to fold today? Does Bellator become de facto leader, or do more promotions start opening up both domestically and or internationally? Great work with the beat.
All right. It becomes this wild, wild west, also known as boxing. Thank you very much, where the great fights almost never happen, and the greed slowly pulls from the sport. Right now in boxing, we're doing good. A lot of TV money out there.
Yep.
I'm cashing some of those checks. We're doing good at the moment.
I see that.
But as you saw with Tyson Fury, not to go all boxing on you, but signing with ESPN and Top Rank and a promotional
$100 million
deal.
more.
Now you have the top 3 heavyweights in the world, all unbeaten, all getting us so fired up that they're going to fight each other, and all 3 tied to separate TV deals that will likely prevent them from ever fighting each other unless the money piles up so high that we can do a 2-network joint pay-per-view. It's all a bunch of crap and BS, and MMA would be there tomorrow if UFC fell apart.
You know what's funny about this? Anthony Joshua did like the media tour in New York for this Jarrell Miller fight, and I was watching him on SiriusXM. He came by. I was watching him on The Breakfast Club, all these places, and folks were asking him like, "Yo, man, like, why aren't you fighting Deontay Wilder?" And he was like, he basically got back to this position, which is, you know, show me what's in the way. Show me why I can't do this. It's like, dude, all y'all say this at every fight you take with not the other guy. Y'all keep taking fights with the people we don't want you to take fights with, and then in the media tours tell us why, yeah, for sure that other guy is next. It's like we're through the looking glass on this one.
Yeah, I agree. It would be the same thing. Some fighters would go to Bellator, some fighters would go to one, you know, all kinds of promotions depending on, you know, where they're from, what deal, you know, better suits them. And yeah, it'd be spread up, and it would be a lot of fights, you know, that wouldn't happen. That's the good thing about the UFC, is that we do more often than not get the fights that we want to see.
Yeah. Well, there's a clear part of that question I don't think we answered, is that would it just be open season where suddenly guys would these promotions, Bellator, become like representatives of fighters rather than
Golden Boy MMA would come back,
forming their own league? So it would be more like the networks would hold the power, because the networks could say, okay, I want that fighter from Bellator and that fighter from one to fight each other on our network. Mm-hmm. Or would it eventually turn into a thing where there's separate leagues and no one's fighting each other, which is kind of where boxing is at right now. Anyway.
Well, Ryzen and Bellator seem to have a good working relationship, so that'd be a good place to start.
They also have a good working relationship because they're both on the outside, though.
In any industry where you get that kind of a breakup, at first there's a period of collaboration. I think at first you'd get a lot of crossover where folks are looking to make big fights and make things possible, and there aren't these institutional hurdles, and then competitors would die off and you'd see a reconsolidation. Now, how that would look, I don't know. You would imagine Bellator would probably be at the front of that list, but who's to say what some billionaire might, maybe the Fertittas come back in and scoop everybody up. You know, so there would be a reconsolidation, but I do think there'd be a honeymoon phase where you'd get some big fights like that. So, next. All right, table. What are your thoughts on college athletes making in millions of dollars for the NCAA and colleges, risking injury before they turn pro while not getting paid? If you guys didn't see last night, Zion Williamson, who might be the most exciting athletic talent on earth, 30 seconds into a game where the tickets were upwards of $4,000 a seat for a college game. Spike Lee was there, the former president, and 30 seconds in, this like athletic phenom dribbles, and like tries to stop, and when he does, his shoe just explodes. And maybe
his knee along with it.
Well, it turns out to be minor. I think he has a knee sprain, so he'll be all right in the end. But everyone out there is like, dude, why is this guy playing? He's going to be number 1 in the draft. He's going to make obviously his rookie contract, but he's going to make a ton of money in the NBA. Sit this dude. This is gross and unfair. Table, how do we feel about it?
It's BS. This has been talked about forever. You know, they are out there putting on a show. You know, a lot of people are making money off them, but they're not, which is pretty ridiculous. And look, you know, they're college kids. College kids need money, so Yeah, it's a messed up situation.
We're far away from that argument of, well, hey, they're getting free education and the exposure to get themselves ready to be drafted. We know how dirty this NCAA business is with the college football and college basketball TV deals and what the coaches are getting paid through apparel deals. Yeah, it's time to have some form of...
Although to recognize Zion can't go to the draft because the NBA put a rule you have to be, 19 to go, so they kind of have to sit out a year. I'd like them to do a year where maybe they play in the G League, like the Rio Grande Red Vipers, and the DC's is the Go-Go, which is a type of music native to DC. So why can't they do that? Why can't they play professional ball with other pros? But
well, they can. It's just there's not that profitable. There's no exposure.
But I'm saying find a way for them to make money doing that.
Fair
create you still go through the draft.
I mean, didn't Brandon Jennings, for example, the former Bucks guard, go to Europe for his 1 year rather than?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Did you say go-go music?
Yeah, go-go music.
Is that like those bands you like Dying Children, or is that more like?
No. It's like Trouble Funk and Backyard, and so there's a style of music native to DC called go-go.
Wow.
It's heavy percussion, and it's obviously an African American art form, which is dying because the city's changing.
All right.
Go-go, yeah.
So that's the opposite of Luke Thomas death metal. Yes.
So the DC NBA team is the Wizards. The G League team is the Go-Go. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I don't know what Miami's is.
I have no idea.
Arroz con pollo.
No, probably, yeah. Cafecito, cortadito.
I bet it's something like that. But generally, here's what my only thing about the guys going to college. College ball is just not as interesting as it used to be. I remember the days when Shane Battier went all 4 years, it was so much better. But the other part is, I agree that they should be able to go pro right away. The problem for me is they want to avoid another Kwame Brown situation where you draft a kid right out of high school and he's from Podunk, Brunswick, Georgia, which, you ever been to Brunswick? No? Don't go. In any event, so he gets out, and have you ever read stories about Kwame living in D.C. by himself where he didn't know how to clothes shop? No one ever showed him how to shop for clothes. And he would buy suits that his agent would tell him to go buy, and he didn't know you could wash them, so he would just throw them on the floor and then go buy another suit and another suit. Literally, he didn't know how to live. What the NBA, I think, wants to avoid is a situation where they get that again. Yes. They want someone who has just a little bit of life skills. Yeah. How do you do that between 18 and 20 without college oversight?
Let's not forget Michael Jordan bullied the crap out of him as
There's
well.
that, too.
It's a great book called When Nothing Else Matters about Jordan's 2 seasons in Washington that has a lot of dirt in behind the scenes.
But my point is, yes, he got bullied, but even without that, this was a kid from a super poor part of the country who just didn't know what he was doing. They don't want to run into that again. But, all right, there you go. Next, please. The legendary Scottish sports journalist Hugh McIlvaney, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, passed away recently. This got me to thinking, which sports writers and journalists in general do you enjoy? And could you recommend a sports-related book which really impressed you or had an effect on you? All right, who wants to go first on that? I thought it was a great question, actually. I do not know who the journalist is in question, the Scottish gentleman, but I've been thinking a lot about this recently. Forget the book part. What other journals do you read? Let's say outside of MMA. Oh my God.
I don't have any.
I try so hard. I try.
Everyone over at MMA Fighting.
You don't follow any other sports?
Soccer.
You clearly do.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anyone in soccer you follow?
I follow, but not just like written, somebody that writes, for example. I follow a few people that talk about soccer a lot. Anita Koas is one from Being Sports. A few journalists like that, but no, I don't have a favorite that I'm I'm a huge fan of and I just follow consistently.
Yeah, I think it's changed because, growing up in the 80s, before the internet, newspaper columnists and the ones who could make it on TV had a lot more power, and then you got a hold of their TV personality, and then you've sought out their newspaper, and then you sort of can build this sort of, wow, I love this guy, I follow him, or Sports Illustrated feature writers or whatever. Now it's just a mess on my Twitter timeline, and it's do I even read these stories I click on, or am I just trying to get the meat out of it? It's not like I'm following one person, even in the fight game.
I couldn't possibly disagree more. I agree that what you're talking about is a real phenomenon that can happen. But of your teams, you don't find people who cover them better than others?
No, and it's because covering 3 combat sports, and especially getting pro wrestling in there, which to cover it at the highest level, you need to watch it just an unhealthy amount of hours. Yeah. I don't have time to follow teams anymore.
That's true as well.
Wow. All right. Well, then I guess I'll answer this question. So let's pick a team, shall we? I like, if you're into, let's say, anything DC related, which I'm sure many of you are not, but if you are, Grant Paulson and Danny Rouillet do an amazing show on middays. Chad Dukes as well. Grant Paulson writes for The Athletic. If you're going to the Washington Post, Dan Steinberg of the DC Sports Blog was a big one I used to like. Thomas Boswell, Barry Svoluga. Let's see, at Sports Illustrated, Andrew Sharp does an incredible column for the NBA. I like Nick Wright and Chris Carter on FS1. Who else do I follow?
Now you're talking about you like their TV personality,
but also
like
people who are other media figures. From Madrid, I like Dermot McCorrigan. He is an English-speaking journalist who covers La Liga. You could do Lucas Navarrete, who is the head of the Managing Madrid blog at SB Nation. He's another one who's phenomenal.
Yeah, shout out to guys into a Calderon from SB Nation.
See, I'm beginning to dig through the layers here.
I guess I was missing the spirit of your question. We're talking about which talking heads in other sports.
It's not just talking head, but I don't follow any just jackass who has an opinion. I like the ones who have smart, dedicated opinions and have clearly well-researched in the field. In boxing, Scott Christ over at Bad Left Hook is good. Obviously, you can follow Brian Campbell in there as well. Steve Kim, I like a lot as well. I think it's actually, if you just take in the mush, then that's what it becomes. When you curate around particular personalities, that's when the good stuff begins to appear. That's when you really begin to dig into the details. And that's really what I like. I try to find the very best people for.
Big Chuck Mindenhall fan.
Chuck Mindenhall's great, except when he's writing, which is terrible. No, I'm kidding.
But never meet your heroes though. Once you meet these guys and hang out with them, I'm just kidding. By the way.
So those are some big names. I dedicatedly follow what they have to say, even when I disagree. It's because I know that they have an opinion, right or wrong. It's well researched. That's what I like.
Big Brett Okamoto fan. I don't know if you ever met that guy.
I have a couple times. He gives you the brush off a little more these days.
A little too cool for
little more these days, but generally he's been great. All right, next. I love this little GIF. Watch this. My favorite is because the whole drink just comes flying out right there. See that? He's obviously talking on the phone. This is some frat bro. This is me 20 years ago, bro. I was doing this. I have passed out in the dumbest of places. All right, boys.
You rock the blazer, the shades.
Well, when I was in a fraternity, which was, fraternities in America are one step short of white nationalist organizations. So
yeah, I've always called them white gangs.
We weren't violent, but we were otherwise honkies. In any event, yes. So I used to do that kind of bit, but not anymore. But best hangover food was the question. Best hangover food, Danny.
Caldo de costilla. You know about that?
Yes.
In Colombia, there's this soup that's made out of like the rib of cattle, and
it's like short rib, beef short rib.
Yeah, and it's supposed to. They say it's levanta muertos, like it literally erases people from the dead. Like when you're hungover, like your head hurts, you're a mess. You just go get a caldo de costilla. It's got potatoes in it, cilantro, everything, corn. You eat that and you're set for the day.
It's like the kind that's got the clear broth. Not fully clear, but clearish.
Yeah.
And here's the best part is I didn't know what it was, and I had it one time. You kind of eat over the bowl of soup, so the heat coming up makes you sweat.
Now that's
and then
yes.
Here's the underrated part of it. You're getting like tasty beef, tasty veggies, plus all that water from the broth. Yeah. It's actually a pretty nifty little trick how they get you to eat that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to bounce back after a hard night for sure.
Yeah, I've always stood by Denny's as being the best hangover food possible.
Yeah.
Any kind of sloppy breakfast where you're combining the elements of pancakes, eggs, and just a lot of syrup just over everything that doesn't even belong there. It's not in a gas station. Go to the diner there. Denny's water has saved me many a night or morning. Yeah.
I would say leftover calentado, but basically like leftover like rice, reheat it the next day, put some egg in it, put some protein in it. And then Pedialyte. As I get older, bro, Pedialyte is that deal for me. I need it in my life. So I would say that. I don't go to Denny's.
No. I don't, except for when I'm absurdly hungover. Yeah.
When was the last time you were absurdly hungover?
I'm old now. I've got the old man disease where it's unpredictable. Like I could be absurdly hungover off of like 3.5 beers at like a neighbor's house just hanging out one night.
Yeah.
Really bad, yeah.
Danny?
Like last Thursday.
Yeah, the old man thing is you're not ready for this yet. You're at the age now where you basically know what you're going to get into based on what you drink.
Yeah.
But there comes a point in your biology where your biology just fails you. Where you're all of a sudden, it's like, I know if I have 6 beers, this will happen.
Yeah.
But then you get to a situation where you have literally 1 or 2 cocktails, and you're like, why do I feel this way? Your biology just quits on you.
Or you have one 16-ounce
What's the age limit?
I didn't really. Okay, so I'm 39. I didn't really feel anything even through 35. I'd say around 36, 37.
I started to get unpredictability about 29, 30, but still could control it, still could monitor it.
No.
Once I got about 34, 35, all bets are off. What you're saying, I mean, I can have a night with friends where I'm laughing, I can drink 9, 10 beers, and it's fine the next day, and I think, oh, I'm back, I'm good.
Yeah.
I can even have a couple whiskey shots, I'm good. And then, like I said, 2 glasses of wine with my wife on a Tuesday night, and the next morning there's a javelin sticking out of my forehead.
Yes, I completely agree.
Man, that sucks.
So how old are you?
26.
You got a good 10 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
After that, bro,
It's a good.
your biology.
Still my prime.
Your biology. Yeah, you're in your prime. You're in your prime. After that,
Yeah.
it's off to the regional
I'll
scene
remember
for you.
that, yeah.
All right, next. Hey, yo, why does Jason Herzog's name never come up when the best referee thing comes up? Shouldn't the best referee be the one who is never talked about? To a degree, that's a good point, actually. I can't remember him ever making a bad call, and he always has sweet Nike Air Max shoes. Thoughts, 'S. Thanks, fellers. Jason Herzog never gets credit. Here's the thing I've noticed about him. I've seen him in Bellator for years at this point. I don't know that I've seen him in the UFC that often. I don't know what the reason for that is.
I've seen him a lot. He doesn't seem to get pay-per-view main events. But
Maybe that's
I've seen
it.
him a lot.
Okay.
He is a good ref.
He is a super solid ref. I saw him and I met him at the MMA Awards several years ago. Couldn't have been nicer. Thoughtful, has interesting ideas. And you're right, there are a couple of guys that just kind of float out there who do, like another guy who...
Mike Beltran is a good...
Mike Beltran's a super... Everyone just
man.
clowns the thing, but you just grade him on his abilities. He's pretty good. Leon Roberts is another one, dude. Leon Roberts never gets this acclaim as a great ref. Dude, how many times have you seen Leon Roberts with a bad stoppage? Yeah, everyone's got a few of them, okay? But generally, he's a very good referee. I'd say the same thing for Herzog, Roberts.
Josh Rosenthal.
Josh
and he likes to
Rosenthal.
party, so
Is he
yeah.
still? Because I know he was out for a while. Is he back?
He's back. I don't know how back he is, but he has refereed shows. I know that the commission, basically what they were waiting for is while he was on probation, after he got out, they wanted that to be over, and then they were going to reintroduce him, and I think that is now over. So he is back. I know how active he is, I don't really know. Man, that's the story to get. I have reached out to Josh Rosenthal probably 50 times to try to get him on the show, and every time it's, doesn't even respond. Chuck Mindendahl told me the exact same thing. He just doesn't want to do media, but that's the guy. You want to talk about stories?
Get media. Let's just hang out with him, right?
Yeah. It's all legal in California now anyway, so who cares? But is that it? One more? I think we have one more. Let's see it. Are you interested in the new One flyweight tournament or any of their events? Saludos desde España. Okay, let's see here. Let me pull this up. Who is in there?
They just signed Yushin Okami.
They did.
Be still, my heart. Let's see. Here is their flyweight world Grand Prix. Okay. God, I cannot see. I'm just dying. I'm literally dying. Yuya Wakamatsu is going to fight Demetrius Johnson. Then Tatsumitsu Wada, the World Anti-Doping Agency, is going to fight Ivanildo Delfino. On the other side, you've got Karat Akhmatov taking on Reese McLaren. And then Danny Kingad taking on Andrew Leone. There are a couple names in here, including Andrew Leone and Karat Akhmatov, that are pretty interesting. Obviously, Demetrius carries some weight as well there. Beyond that, I don't know. Am I really interested? No, I'm not really interested.
Other than watching Demetrius, just seeing how he does at one, that's sort of...
Yeah, the names that they've signed are going to pull us in, whether it's Sage Northcutt or even Sexyama, and then it's up to them to sort of try to impress us in that. Am I excited? Yes, because I know those names will get me there, but they're still going to have to live up to it. I don't have no expectations for how good or bad it's going to be when I get there.
Yeah, I'm not excited, for the tournament per se, but I'm just really curious to see how Demetrius looks at one, how busy he's going to be in just that chapter in his career.
Okay, I'm not going to front. I don't really care. So, I don't really care.
There you go.
Any more? Let's see if there's any more. That's it? Oh, we're good. That's it. We're done. Ended with I don't care. All right, so there we go. Boys, good job today. I really appreciate it. You went the whole time without talking about gas stations. I know that was a struggle for you.
I'm not one-dimensional. I mean, come on.
Also,
yes.
we didn't really mention Conor McGregor all that much.
Yes, we didn't.
Or we didn't mention Dustin Poirier saying "cut me."
And Ally Quinta. Wow. But you guys did a great job today, so I really appreciate it. Thank you for the spirited debate. I'm sure the people on YouTube will appreciate it for what it was actually supposed to be.
Hey, plug me in. I'm here, all right? Plug me in.
We will be back next week. We'll be back next week because not this weekend, which is UFC Prague. Also, Bellator 217. James Gallagher is fighting, and then it's just a bunch of like Irish sort of standout
Charlie
regional
Ward,
guys.
not the Heisman Trophy winner, but Connor's.
Yes, is it Hospital was his middle name? Charlie Hospital Ward? It used to be. It used to be something like that. In any event, that's going to be, I guess, Saturday, and then UFC Prague will be Saturday as well. Stefan Struve on the last fight of his contract, coming off 3 losses in a row, so that's a big one to watch.
Also, Dotson versus Peter Yan.
Yan, such a good
Oh,
fight.
yeah, that's the fight of the weekend.
Yes.
And prayers for Sergei Karatanov's ball bag.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
That as well. We are back next week for sure because we got to get ready for what's going to be the biggest card of the year in UFC 235. Really, really can't wait for that. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We always appreciate that when you do. For Brian, for Danny, I am Luke. Until next time, hands up, chin down, let them fly. This is the MMA Beat.